You're just going to have to know that they have papillae. Papillae are basically taste buds. This is a filiform papillae, or a taste bud on the tongue. So when you see anything like this, what you're seeing here is basically this is the connective tissue, and here's the epithelial tissue, similar to skin actually, but on top you're going to have this rounded area here called papillae. So these right here are actually taste buds on the tongue. So if you saw this, let me bring it down so you can get an idea. So the free surface is the top of the tongue. Everything below it is going to be the papillae, or what's called filiform papillae, which is one of the three different taste buds that you have on your surface of your tongue. So that's what that looks like. If you go a little deeper, that's all basically down here. Now you get into the hypoglossal muscles that actually work the tongue. And then if I go all the way through the hypoglossal muscles, and on the base you're going to have some fat. Now on the tongue we didn't talk about this, but remember in your textbook, I don't know if you have to know this, that your tongue is anchored in the floor of the mouth by the frenulum.
Yeah, you need to know.
Okay, the lingual frenulum is the one that actually attaches the bottom of your tongue to the floor of your mouth. If you have, some children are born with a very tight frenulum, and they commonly have referred to that as where they actually cannot speak, they actually have tongue tied. And if they get cut, or if they're too loose, or they get torn, then they have uncontrollability of the tongue. And with not having a frenulum, you cannot speak appropriately. So your tongue has the tendency to flap around your mouth because there's nothing to hold it down. So it just flaps around and can't control it. You also have what's called labia frenulums on the inside and below here, where your lips actually attach to the gingiva of your teeth, or of your oral cavity. Alright, so that's one. Now let's move from there into the salivary gland. Let's see, do we have all three? No, we don't. Now most of the salivary glands I'm going to show you are going to be in larger form. They're hard to really kind of get a good idea of, so let's pop this up a little. Now with salivary glands, you have to remember that being that they're glandular in nature and they're exocrine, they're going to have follicles in them, similar to anything that has the ability to secrete out into the system. I usually don't use salivary glands, but I thought I'd just take some time to show you. You'll see a whole bunch of follicles that are kind of put together with different septums in between them. And this is these are the glands that actually produce, like there's some over here and there's some over there, that actually produce the salivary. And the ducts, you're going to see, are going to be generally right through here. And that's what they secrete out of in the duct. Let's see if there's any more. There's another one, larger. There's another duct. Another duct. So just remember, if you see anything that looks like a bunch of follicles together with ducts, don't get this confused with the pancreatic islets, because there is no acini cells, no dark purple cells on that one. Now the esophagus is really easy to tell because it's going to be let's back off a little. It's going to be in a circular structure, almost a collapsed circular structure. Now what's the lining inside the esophagus? Well, in the upper esophagus, it's going to be stratified squamous, which you can see right here. So here's the basal lamina, and from here to here is stratified squamous, all the way up. So this whole layer on inside of the esophagus, and remember, the esophagus is a muscular tube, so when there's no food in it, it just collapses. And that's what it looks like. When the food would come down from the oropharynx and into here, this would start expanding out with the food, and depending on how much food you have the size of the bolus you took, that's sometimes, if you took too much, it can only expand so much and you start getting some choking issues. But this is all stratified squamous. Whenever you see anything that's kind of in a circle with an opening in the center, it's going to be the esophagus. That one's relatively, we'll take a look at these again and again. Just want to run through some of these now. Now we get in the stomach. And we're going to look at the stomach in three sections. First section is the fundus, which is the upper part of the stomach. And what you're really looking at here, the three layers, okay, now here's the actual inside layer of the stomach. Now, right here are the different muscle layers. Let me kind of get over here. All right, so the stomach inside, as the esophageal sphincter opens up into the cardiac area of the stomach, which is right kind of a little bit away from the fundus, you're going to have, all these are the rugae on the inside with your simple columnar, and then below it you have all the different muscle layers. As you work your way out, you can see the three different muscle layers. See how the different patterns, they go in actually different patterns and waves. Now if we get closer and take a closer look at the tissue, this becomes a little more, now you can start seeing those columnar cells. Whoa. Let's get out here. There we go. Alright, so what you're looking at now is you're looking at inside the stomach. These are the rugae. And you have gastric pits in the stomach. And you'll see those are simple columnar, and all those dark structures, okay, these right here, these are actually what they refer to as the nuclei. And those white areas all through here, these are the significant goblet cells that are secreting mucus to cover the stomach lining. Similar to what we've seen before. But this is in the cardiac area. Now, as we move across, let's back off just a little. Oops, went the wrong direction. These are a little different. This is actually down into the pyloric region. So again, you can see the stomach with the rugae. Let me kind of pick it up one more time.
How do we identify a gastric pit?
I'll show you. They're actually pretty easy. Depending on how much he has it magnified, try to find a good. So if you're looking at something this, the gastric pits are always down here, like here, here, here. They literally are a pit right down at the very bottom. And this is where you'd find your parietal cells and your chief cells that are going to secrete hydrochloric acid and pepsin and so on and so forth. All the ones at the base of those open areas are called the gastric pits.
What about the gastric glands?
Gastric glands are going to be right below it. Let's see if we can see them. Okay, so when you're looking here, here's going to be a gastric pit. You still have simple columnar coming all the way around. Your the gastric glands are going to be down here to secrete whatever they're going to be, whether they're parietal or chief cells. And they kind of line up along the sides. They've never really asked to pick out a chief cell and or a parietal cell because it's virtually impossible to see the difference. But they could ask you what's at the bottom. They could be pointing right here and say, what ID item, you'd say gastric pit. Okay? Now let's back off and get a far away view here. They can sometimes also ask about the different muscular layers. So you have 1, 2, and the inner one 3. Oblique, circular, and longitudinal. Let's see if we get a better view over here. No, not really. That's about as best you're going to get it. This is kind of a smaller representation. You have the oblique, here's the longitudinal, and the circular is right in the middle. You can kind of see the difference in the patterns as you look at them. There's some difference, you can be able to pick it up. But it depends on what they're looking for. If they want you to identify a pit or what kind of tissue it is, they're probably going to pop it up to something more like this, where you can actually see the simple columnar, you can see the actual rugae and the folds. Like here's the gastric gland, gastric gland, gastric gland. Can you see those? Those are the gastric glands that actually secrete up in there. All right.